So it seems that the next major Warhammer 40k reveal is here. We've got details of the next codex, rather nice new character miniatures, a new Combat Patrol and Battleforce box set, but perhaps a bit of disappointment as well, given some much needed kits don't seem to be getting updates this time around. Let's talk about what's here and what's not. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking about a fairly big Warhammer 40k Monday preview, and it seems that we're finding out what's happening for the last codex of the edition that we know about so far. Drukhari certainly felt like they were one of the armies of Warhammer 40k that were kind of hopeful they might get some sort of refresh in 10th edition. They haven't really had a major release wave in around about 10 years or so. Most of their current line of models come from 2010, and then they had another smaller release wave with a Void Raven, some characters and some racks in 2014, but beside that there have just been a couple of character releases and a couple of squads. Compared with the majority of factions of Warhammer 40k at the moment, they do feel like they may be in a place where they might be going backwards, given that quite a few kits out of their current range are basically being quietly retired. Things like the Grotesques, Court of the Archon, Urian Rakarth and the Beastmasters, so needed a bunch of plastic kits to make sure they'd still continue into the future. Games Workshop of course have been removing the vast majority of fine cast models not on sale from the rules in 10th edition. We've had that with the Grey Knights and Kaldor Drago very recently. Seeing as they seem to be the last codex to come out for 10th edition, I think there was some hope they might have had a big release wave. Seeing as that's what they tended to do with the last codexes out of 9th edition, we had Guard, Votann and the World Eaters being the last three there, and each of those came with a more major release wave than most. We knew that one of the things that was coming was Lady Malys, as her sprue leaked early, but I think there was some good hope that they were getting a fair bit more than that. It seems that today we're finding out though, Games Workshop have done an announcement on Warhammer Community, basically talking through what the Drukhari are getting. They've got their new codex, there's Lady Malys as we knew, and the only other model reveal is a new Archon model, they're really quite a nice one at that, and a model that sorely needed updating. It's definitely a wishlist item being ticked off there. Beyond that though, the other major units don't seem to have anything coming this edition, and the only other releases are Combat Patrol Drukhari as the update for the rather good one that they had, and a Battleforce box set that's very infantry focused called the Realspace Raiders. That will be the first place to get your hands on the Archon if you want one. It's definitely not the worst release in the world, maybe one more character than certain factions have got in 10th edition, but it's barely making a dent in the wish list of retired resin kits, so maybe at least some fairly reasonable expectation that they might have had more. I do very strongly suspect that this is all they're going to be getting for them, outside of any surprise kill team or end edition campaign releases at least. Usually these days when they reveal codex content, they tend to showcase everything rather than having things come out piecemeal, or if there is more on the way, like the Space Wolves, to clearly showcase that there's going to be another wave shown off. They did that with the Blood Angels as well last year. It looks like in that article they didn't actually say a release date, but I suspect it's probably going to be within 2025. Typically for their reveals to full releases, it's usually around about 2 months give or take. As this is early September, I guess we could expect maybe sometime early to mid-November, but I'd just be pretty surprised if they were revealing something now that is all the way out to January, or they would have actually mentioned that in the article if it's quite that far away. After this one is done though, it looks like it could be slightly uncharted territory for 40k. Any other release waves they want to get done before the edition end, and likely an end edition campaign series like normal. Let's take a look at the new stuff though, and first up we have Lady Malys, the one that Games Workshop posted out the sprue of early. She's a named Archon of the Cabal of the Poisoned Tongue, one of the bigger players within Commoner Politics, and one of the few schemers that's a rival for Vex himself. She's got some fun lore with an interaction with the Laughing God of the Harlequins, challenging Segarak to a battle of wits and winning a blade and a crystal heart as a result, and apparently now getting some suspicious luck and some unusual boons of the Laughing God to resist Psychers. She's one of a few Drukhari characters that used to have rules but no model in a previous codex, along with some others like Baron Sardonyx or Duke Slicers. I feel like her model's been pretty well executed, perched on a tactical bit of Eldari debris, sword outstretched and holding a steel-bladed fan, and she's got some Cabal-specific details like the envenomed snake that she's got on her wrist, denoting the Cabal that she commands. From Games Workshop's description they gave us a few rule hints. They said that her knowledge of poisons make her unit's attacks more deadlier than usual, might be lethal hits or some specific sort of poison buffing rule, and they also implied that she'll have one of those powers to be able to redeploy units, a pretty common ability over quite a lot of factions. Here's a few more pictures, including her head swap build with a veil it seems. Maybe a bit surprising she's got a sort of armoured tail style thing to swing around there, and you can see a better view of her pose and barbed longsword. Before we move on to Archons, Combat Patrols and Battle Forces, I'll just give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, Baron of Dice. They're a high quality dice maker based in the USA. They made some fancy dice for the channel and asked to sponsor some videos. Their main offering is a whole bunch of faction-specific dice, things that could work for various different wargaming armies out there, both Games Workshop ones and beyond. They do have a few options that could work well enough for the Darkkin, particularly those twisted purple rune ones on the left maybe. They've got absolutely loads more designs beyond that though, good ones for all sorts of chapters, legions, and various armies out there. Typically the offering is to get 25 dice in one set. You often have the choice of rounded versus squared corners, and usually they cost around $35 or £28 shipping out from the USA. If you do happen to order anything from them, then they gave me a code Auspex for 5% off. That could at least save a little bit on any order you happen to make. As mentioned, they've also got the fun channel logo design as well. I was pretty impressed with the craftsmanship on these ones, and the black design went down very well with people. But in any case, feel free to check them out. There'll be links down in the video description, and a big thank you to them for sponsoring this one. On to our next new model though, and next up we have the new Archon. And as mentioned, having a refresh of the Archon kit was definitely on the wish list for Drukhari players. Games Workshop released the plastic one on the right in 2014, which I say the actual model itself was nice enough, but the posing was just such a weird choice. Holding his blast pistol and husk blade across his chest, crossing his arms over. The new one I think they've done a much better job with, to be honest. You can see 3 different builds of it here. Looks like we've got a bit more of a leg spread apart pose, perching on a standard Games Workshop tactical rock to give them a bit more elevation. And it's one of the more recent lineup of pretty flexible multi-part plastic kits. The primary weapon that would look like a husk blade versus a power weapon, and I guess an agonizer for the whip one. And then on the other hand looks like it's a blast pistol or sort of balefire casket or soul trap. Not 100% sure what that's supposed to represent. And then plenty of fun aesthetic options as well. 3 head swaps it seems, 2 bear heads and a sort of ancient horned helmet one that's a throwback to the previous Archon model. A choice of different loincloths. It looks like there's both a male and female breastplate too. It certainly looks like they were going for emulating the old one from the previous launch wave from back in 5th edition or so. It looks like the helm and both of his arm options are really quite similar, plus some big spines from behind his back. So really quite nice to see a model that was well received get a reinterpretation. I guess that means that you might have a bit more choice of free war gear on the Archon datasheet when we get it. Apparently the first place to pick up that Archon model will be the new launch Battleforce box sets, the Realspace Raiders, and then as with the other solo release models for 40k 10th edition that have come out this way, they'll probably drop on their own in around about 2 or 3 months time after that. For 40k's Battleforces recently, there's generally tended to be a higher price point and a lower price point, which means that after a price rise, this one could be anywhere between $220 or $240. I'd estimate something in the vicinity of £140 or €185, though it could be higher or lower, both depending on Games Workshop's price taglines, or whether it's the higher or lower amount. In any case, in the Battleforce box set, it's led by an Archon. There's 5 Scourges, 5 Incubi and 5 Hellions, 10 Cabalite Warriors and 10 Witches, and then a Venom Transport. Seems like it's going for a very Drukhari infantry style approach. May feeling like quite an unusual box set with quite so much on foot. At least currently, for the points in the box set is to be around about 620 points or so, which isn't awful as 40k standards, but not particularly stand out either, likely around about 2.7 points per dollar. Things could certainly change a bit in the Codex. For a discount in the box set, it looks like for US dollars it's around about $310 worth of stuff in the box pre-price rises, and working by typical Battleforce prices, that'll mean that in any given local currency it's around about 25% off, which will be a little bit on the low side as Games Workshop goes. That will probably lead me to suspect that this one's going to be on the lower end of the 2 Battleforce price points, and the actual discount will wind up being somewhere in the 30% or so kind of mark. For initial impressions, it seems pretty reasonable if wanting to start with a more general introduction to it, Drukhari. I do quite like the way that there's no overlap of units here, just one copy of a whole bunch of things, which means that it could be useful to both a newer and older collector potentially. With its big focus on infantry though, I feel like it might be a little bit less exciting to some, compared with if it had a bit more of a balance between lighter infantry and big stuff. Otherwise, we've got the new Combat Patrol box set, and it seems that this one's Drukhari over theme. It seems that we've got a Homunculus Covens focused one, after the slightly Cabalite focused one that we had last time around. I believe that replaced a Witch Cult one. Again, seems very likely that this one's going to be coming out after the price rises, so that'll probably mean around $170. I believe the Combat Patrols are going up to £105. I'm not sure if they're altering things too much on the Euro front. In any case though, in new Combat Patrol Drukhari, it looks like it's a Homunculus, and it's leading 2 sets of 5 racks, and then 2 Talos Pain engines that you can also build as Kronos Parasite engines. As pictured, it looks like they've got 1 built as each, for at least fielding them as an actual Combat Patrol for the Combat Patrol rule set. As expected, I feel like this one is pretty solidly worse than the previous Drukhari Combat Patrol box set. I think it was always going to be, but certainly feels like a downgrade to me versus this one. Previously I had an Archon at 10 Cabalite Warriors, 5 Elite Incubi, and then a Raider and Ravager. And it does seem like the new one's going to be worse both in terms of points, discount, and the amount of plastic that you get in the box set, with a better discount than most combat patrols in 10th edition, plus some really quite nice core units that felt like a fairly good starting point for Drukhari. I was kind of expecting that anything they replaced it with was going to be a downgrade, even if the new one can still be handy to collectors out there. For the numbers for the combat patrol, in terms of points in the box set, at least pre-codex, it looks like it's 330 points in here. None of the models in it are particularly standout points for the amount of money that you spend on them, and even at a discount they don't quite break 2 points per dollar. It does put it as one of the lowest pointed combat patrols in 10th edition currently, and even lower if you happen to build one of the Talos as a Kronos. For the discount in the box set, it does seem that it's in line with Games Workshop's other combat patrols in 10th edition, around about 29% off. They'll probably argue that it's off models that do feel kind of expensive for what they are. For this change, I would mark it as quite a big downgrade. It's still going to be useful enough if you want to add a Covenant element to the army, but it's not going to be quite as general purpose as the previous one unless you want to collect this aspect and start with them. I feel like the most popular combat patrol ones tend to be ones that get quite a lot of points on the board, with it being exciting and impactful units, and this one being really low on that front I suspect isn't going to make it super popular with people. It is still usable though, and if you wanted quite a lot of Covenant units in your army, you could get multiple of them if you wanted. It is cheaper than buying the miniatures separately, though it certainly doesn't feel like quite as strong an offering as some of the other combat patrols that came out in 10th. Finally, we have Codex Drukhari itself. As mentioned, it seems like this one's the last known codex that we know is coming for 10th edition so far. They might surprise us with something else, I suppose, but with 11th edition coming out in the next 9 months or so, there's a reasonable chance that this could be it. And for anything else they come out with, they might just do digital releases for. For stuff that they mentioned in the article, it wasn't the biggest preview. They said there were 5 detachments. I guess one of them will still be Realspace Raiders or a new version of it. I guess another might be either the Sky Splinter Assault or again a new updated version of it. That one was handed out early to give them a different way to play. And then there's a few more archetypes out there. I really wouldn't be too surprised if they have ones that are broadly themed around the Witch Cults and the Homunculus Covenants to make them more of their own army. And I guess they might do a Cabal equivalent of that, unless they thought that the more general purpose detachments worked well for them. Otherwise, they've got a new mechanic in revamped Power from Pain. It sounds like you'll still be generating pain points, though now you'll be plugging them into unique abilities on every datasheet apparently. So it seems that the Codex units are going to have quite an extensive rewrite, and I guess we'll have to think with this in mind. I guess they could still be direct damage boosts, though maybe some of their unique stuff will be locked to that mechanic now. I guess I'd hope that they still will have some passive abilities and not literally everything will be dedicated to throwing resources at them. Maybe you'll have some sort of system where they get a static effect if you're not enhancing them, and then an enhanced version of that effect if you give them a pain token. Otherwise, one thing that they didn't say was how many datasheets are in the Codex. With no plastic updates for all the non-produced stuff, there's a pretty big risk that things like Grotesques, the Court of the Archon and Beastmasters might well be going the way of Warhammer Legends, or at least possibly until they get plastic kits down the line. They have been lenient to a few things that are out of production in 10th edition, though it's generally been the rule that most stuff that's either fine cast, and particularly fine cast things that haven't been produced, have typically been taken out of the Codex. I saw that with Caldor Drago recently in the Grey Knight book. I guess that's still a question mark at the moment, and I would hope again that they just wouldn't remove the rules in the interim, though past precedent certainly doesn't give you much confidence there. In any case, let me know what you make of the reveals. Certainly still some interesting stuff for the Dark Eldar. As I say, the new Archon model is maybe the highlight for me. Really quite an interesting resculpt for a model that could have really done with one. I feel like the Combat Patrol and Battleforce box sets aren't particularly standout ones as Warhammer 40K goes. I'll be interested to hear your takes down in the comments. I guess we'll find out a bit more about their rules and things nearer the time. In any case, I'll leave this one there for now. A big thank you to Baron of Dice for sponsoring this one as mentioned. You can check them out, linked down in the video description. They do have some spiky elf flavoured dice. There are plenty of other solid offerings for all sorts of other 40k factions too. I'll leave that there for now though. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. If you've been enjoying the videos on the channel regularly and you'd like to help support, Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description down below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link's down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.